Johnny Torrio's story doesn't end with a blaze of gunfire in a Chicago street, but in a quiet barber shop in Brooklyn. In April 1957, the man they called the Fox, the mastermind who built an empire and then walked away, sat down in a barber's chair, waited for a haircut, and never walked out. He was 75 years old. For a man who had dodged assassins' bullets, built the Chicago outfit, and invented the modern crime syndicate, it was a stunningly quiet end. But the path that led him to that chair is one of the most fascinating stories of cunning, power, and the birth of organized crime in America. He was born Donato Torrio in a small town in southern Italy in 1882. When he was just 2 years old, his father died, and his widowed mother brought him to the crowded, chaotic streets of New York City's Lower East Side. It was a brutal, competitive world, and young Johnny learned its lessons quickly. He was small and unassuming, but he had a mind that worked differently from the rough-and-tumble street fighters around him. He started as a bouncer and porter, but soon he was leading his own gang, the James Street Boys, and running a billiards parlor that was a front for gambling and loan sharking. His sharp business sense caught the attention of Paul Kelly, the leader of the infamous Five Points gang. Torrio wasn't just a thug, he was an organizer. He saw crime as a business, and he ran it like one. It was in these New York streets that he first met a hot-headed young hoodlum named Al Capone, who looked up to Torrio and would follow him to Chicago a few years later. Torrio's reputation for brains over brawn eventually reached Chicago, where his uncle by marriage, Big Jim Colosimo, ran a sprawling network of brothels and saloons. Colosimo had a problem with Black Hand extortionists, so in 1909, he invited his sharp young nephew to come and help. Torrio solved the problem with characteristic efficiency, and he never left. He took over the day-to-day operations of Colosimo's empire, professionalizing it and expanding it into the suburbs. He was the perfect second in command, quiet, calm, and incredibly competent. While Colosimo enjoyed the high life, Torrio needed the work. Everything changed in 1920 with the start of Prohibition. The entire country went dry, and Torrio immediately saw the staggering potential for profit in bootlegging. But when he urged his boss to get into the liquor business, Colosimo balked. He was rich enough, in love with a new wife, and didn't want the risk. For the ambitious and forward-thinking Torrio, this was an obstacle he couldn't afford. On May 11, 1920, Big Jim Colosimo was shot and killed in the vestibule of his own cafe. The murder weapon was never found, and no one was ever convicted. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. The man who benefited most was Johnny Torrio, who stepped seamlessly into Colosimo's shoes and immediately pivoted the entire organization into bootlegging. Torrio was now the boss of the most powerful criminal organization in Chicago, with his protege, Al Capone, as his right hand. But Torrio was different from other gangsters. He hated violence. He saw it as bad for business. His goal was simple: monopolize the booze trade and make as much money as possible with as little bloodshed as possible. To do this, he proposed a revolutionary idea: a citywide cartel. He brokered a peace agreement between most of the city's bootlegging gangs, dividing up territories and agreeing to work together. It was a testament to his diplomatic skills and sharp mind that he actually pulled it off. For a while, it worked, but one man, Dean O'Banion, the Irish leader of the North Side gang, had no intention of playing by Torrio's rules. He was volatile and ambitious, and he kept encroaching on Torrio's territory. The tension finally boiled over when O'Banion played his ultimate trick. He heard that a brewery he co-owned with Torrio was about to be raided by police. He went to Torrio and lied, claiming he wanted to sell his share and retire from the rackets. Torrio, ever the businessman, agreed to buy him out for a staggering $500,000. On the day of the sale, the police raided the brewery and Torrio was arrested. It was a setup, and O'Banion had conned him out of $500,000 and landed him in serious legal trouble. For the patient, diplomatic Fox, this was the ultimate betrayal. Torrio couldn't act immediately.
because the head of the Unione Siciliana, a powerful figure who kept the peace, was on his deathbed. But the moment that figure died, Torrio gave the order. On November 10, 1924, three men walked into O'Banion's flower shop on North State Street. One of them, Frankie Yale, a notorious Brooklyn gangster, extended his hand in friendship. As O'Banion reached out to shake it, the other two men grabbed his arms. Yale fired 2 bullets into his chest and 2 into his throat. It was a cold, calculated execution, and it became infamous as the handshake murder. O'Banion's death sent a clear message. Johnny Torrio might not like violence, but he would use it with devastating precision to protect his empire.
O'Banion's murder set off a bloody war for control of Chicago. His enraged successors, Jaime Weiss and Bugs Moran, were now on a mission of revenge, and their target was Johnny Torrio. They hunted him for weeks. He became a ghost, constantly moving, constantly guarded, the terrors of a hunted man wearing him down. Finally, on the afternoon of January 24th, 1925, his luck ran out. Torrio and his wife Anna were returning from shopping, pulling up to their bungalow on Clyde Avenue. As they got out of the car, a sedan pulled up alongside them. 2 men jumped out with shotguns and pistols and opened fire. Anna tried to shield her husband, but was pushed aside. Torrio was hit multiple times in the abdomen, the chest, the arm, and his jaw was shattered by a slug. As he lay bleeding on the icy ground, one of the gunmen, believed to be Bugs Moran, stood over him and pressed a pistol to his head for the final shot. He pulled the trigger. The gun clicked empty. He had no bullets left. In a fury, he pistol-whipped the prostrate Torrio before the killer sped away. Torrio was rushed to the hospital, barely clinging to life. As the surgeons worked on him, he kept moaning a single chilling word: "Cauterize it! Cauterize it!" He knew the ways of the underworld all too well. Gangsters often boiled their bullets in garlic or onion water, hoping to cause a fatal infection. Even as he lay dying, the mastermind's mind was working, calculating the risks. He survived, but the man who left that hospital weeks later was not the same Johnny Torrio. The attack had broken something in him. He had seen the future, and it was a future of endless, pointless war. He had also been convicted on the bootlegging charges from the O'Banion setup and faced jail time. Before surrendering to serve his sentence, he called Al Capone to his home. He handed over the reins of his multi-million-dollar empire and told him, "It's all yours, Al. Me? I'm quittin'. It's Europe for me." Torrio retreated to Italy with his wife and mother, leaving Capone to fight the brutal wars he had foreseen. But by 1928, the political climate in Italy under Mussolini was becoming hostile, and the Fox returned to America. He was a wealthy man and could have retired for good. But Torrio had one last monumental contribution to make. He looked at the chaos of American gangland, the turf wars, the assassinations, the waste, and he saw the solution he had always believed in: organization. He began traveling east, meeting with a new generation of gangsters who were far more receptive to his ideas than O'Banion had been. Men like Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, and Frank Costello were young, ambitious, and tired of the old-school violence. Torrio planted the seed of a revolutionary idea: a national crime syndicate. It would be a confederation of criminal families across the country, a board of directors that would arbitrate disputes, divide territories, and maximize profits for everyone. His idea was met with enthusiasm. In May 1929, at a hotel in Atlantic City, Torrio helped preside over a historic conference where the syndicate was effectively born. He had finally achieved his dream of bringing order to the underworld. The final years of Johnny Torrio's life were quiet. He was eventually caught on the same charge that would fell Capone, tax evasion, and served another short prison sentence in the late 1930s. After his release, he lived as a wealthy, unassuming man in Brooklyn, far from the bloody chaos of Prohibition-era Chicago
he had left behind. He never returned to a life of crime. And so, on that spring day in 1957, the man who had built an empire with his mind, survived a hail of bullets, and created the template for modern organized crime, simply sat down in a barber's chair, closed his eyes, and was gone. The fox had finally outsmarted everyone, including death itself, by slipping away on his own quiet terms.